Welcome to the Q Podcast.
Q is about conversation.
If we're really concerned about ending poverty, we've got to be more concerned about creating justice.
Our cultural products as Christians need to both defy and resonate with the culture.
But God's doing amazing things. His church is expanding. His church is growing.
It's not what's the purpose of my life. It's what is the purpose that's been assigned.
Stay curious. Think well. Advance good. This is Q.
Welcome to another edition of the Q Podcast. I'm Gabe Lyons, and I'm so glad you've joined us. And this is an exciting week around the Q world because so many of you have signed on to host Q dinners. And if you've never heard of a Q dinner, I want you to know it's probably the simplest thing you could do and one of the most impactful things you could do to affect culture. So we talk a lot about culture. It can sound like this really big idea around here of how do you change culture? Well, you do it by creating spaces where you're changing people's ideas, their thoughts. You're giving them space to think and create together and learn from one another. If you go to qdinners.com, you can sign on to host a dinner in your home. Now, there's no charge from Q, obviously, for you to do this. You're obviously going to need to put together a great meal, food, apps, drinks, however you want to do it. But what we encourage you to do is invite anywhere from 6 to 12 people, come together for the night. This can be friends from work. This can be your small group if you're part of a church community. This could be your family, extended family. I mean, especially over the holidays. We have so many conversations that are superficial. They're surfacey. People are a little afraid these days to go deep into what they think about things because it can polarize. And so we just rather avoid that. Well, we've tried to create space where you can have a substantive conversation around a topic that has consequence, that matters, but isn't going to be divisive. It's going to be helpful. So the topic for this month in November and December is our loneliness epidemic. We have an incredible 9-minute talk by Senator Ben Sasse that really outlines the problem. Why is the life expectancy in America dropping the last 2 years? Why is the CDC labeling a certain type of death deaths of despair? You'll get into all that when you watch this talk, but do it in community. It's 9 minutes. Everybody comes into your home. You greet, introduce people. You take 9 minutes. It's awkward at first to say, hey, we're going to watch something together because we want to have a real conversation tonight. You watch it, and then you sit down for dinner, and we've given you a host guide so you know exactly how to lead people through a great conversation. There isn't perfect answers. The point is, let's talk about it. And so at Q Dinners, you're talking about serious issues with the people that you do life with. And we think that's an important improvement and an opportunity for us to lead well in this changing time. I also am excited about the conversation we're going to have today on this podcast. I'm talking with Alex Lerza. He's the founder of rTribe. And if you've never heard of rTribe, it's probably one of the most innovative tools to help people pursue counseling, recovery, coaching, and all from their phone. So we talk a lot around here about technology, the way it's changing our lives, the way smartphones can sometimes distract us. What I love about what Alex has done is he's flipping that on its head and using the phone for good and helping people really work through the trauma, the counseling, the issues that all of us have, but sometimes we can't access it either because of affordability or limited time, or we just don't know where to start. And today you're going to discover the whole vision behind how you can get involved and how you can receive the kind of help you need, even at no cost. If you stay tuned at the end of this podcast, you'll hear our special offer we're making available where every single one of you can have a free 30-minute session with a counselor from rTribe. So listen in now for my discussion with Alex. So Alex, before we jump into the depths of the way your work is helping, to me, just be such an incredible solution to some of the challenges that the world of technology is creating for all of us, tell us a little bit about your background, and then I want to get into just some of your perspective on technology.
Sure, yeah. Thanks for having me on. I think the important things about my background that inform this technology conversation is I sit on that digital native, digital immigrant divide for when I was born. And so I feel like, I've understood that as God calling me to try to translate in some ways between the generations. I think also just other aspects of my background that are important is, being a marriage family therapist by training. And also I was in campus ministry for 6 years. And so I care a lot about how we pursue transformation from a mental health perspective, from a wellness perspective, and how we understand it how does our theology intersect with what we're understanding in terms of science
Yeah.
in that arena? And I also have just a big heart for Christian leaders because, I was in that pedestal position, and it's a hard place to actually pursue transformation personally sometimes. So it's a little bit of what my background and my passions.
Yeah, and I love that. I mean, part of the Q audience here is really set on trying to think well about these topics and issues. Many are leaders, many are dealing with the pressures of trying to keep up with innovation, but also help themselves and help people better navigate the tensions that come with that. And so it's not always that easy. We all have these smartphones in our hands now, which, as Kevin Kelly, who co-founded Wired Magazine, described, it's crazy. We have in the palm of our hand 5,000 plus years of just human innovation. Every kind of invention that's ever been made possible throughout history now sits in the palm of our fingertips. We know that we touch these phones 2,617 times a day. So this technology's here, but what do you feel like we're not even understanding at this point in history about this kind of technology?
Yeah, I think the thing that we don't understand is that we are powerless when it comes to our relationship with a smartphone. And that word may just already cause people to want to shut off this interview.
No, I think I'm more interested now. I mean, come on. What do you mean powerless?
Well, it's funny that the kind of the quote that helps, I think, people understand this is the famous Kaiser Soze from The Usual Suspects said, the greatest trick the devil ever pulled was making the world believe he didn't exist. And I think it's similar with Silicon Valley. The smartphone is this incredible contribution and gift, but really the greatest feat is that these companies have made us to believe that we are in control, of the smartphone rather than the other way around.
In that sense, I mean, we feel like we're in control, yet there's some puppet strings maybe being pulled a little bit that are making us respond, react, start to live in certain ways because of this technology. When you think about it, though, how do you see this playing out?
On kind of more of this kind of powerless side, what a lot of people don't understand is that they have behavioral specialists who basically run thousands of experiments a minute, a day, to really understand how to manipulate our behavior. These are called A/B tests. And so it's out of these A/B tests, where you present one thing to one group, another thing to another group. And if you notice that this group decides to make this choice, then now you change the smartphone, you've changed the service, you've changed the app, because you have evidence to say that this will control or elicit this human response. And so that's kind of the secret sauce actually behind all of these apps, is that it is really behavioral science, whether it's continuous scroll, which was added, or the like button, or those red badges on apps that tell you there's something there. We kind of just relate to those like they've always been there, and it makes sense that they're there, but those actually came out of scientific rigor that would change people's behavior so that they would touch the phone that 2,000 plus times.
Yeah. And it seems like most people don't quite realize that attention spent on our phone equals dollars, right? I mean, these companies are making money off of our attention. And you talk about just the way these features just show up. I mean, I think about Netflix right now. When I go to Netflix, it just starts playing for me like some show that I don't even care about. I don't want to necessarily see. It might not be appropriate for a young child to even hear the beginning of a conversation that they're just literally auto-loading now and trying to play in an effort to just get you bought in. And so you're right. We don't think about it. We think it's, this is good service, good marketing, good branding, interesting, but we're not realizing behind that there's a manipulation happening. And we're kind of the ones being played.
Yeah. And it's scary, even if you could walk away from this conversation and be like, okay, I know that, there's these different mechanisms which have been proven to control or change human behavior, but that's not enough. It's not just to say, I understand this is happening. It's a deeper thing to admit, I am actually powerless. If I expose myself to this, I will lose my power to choose. I will lose my freedom. I will lose my perspective. And so I think that is really the deep wrestling that I think needs to happen for this generation.
Yeah, and in your own world, I mean, what are some of the ways once we acknowledge and understand maybe that we're powerless, and I guess it doesn't have such a hold on us because we recognize what's happening by acknowledging that. What are some of the ways we start to engage differently, or ways we can be more intentional with how we're thinking about our attachment to our phones?
Yeah, there's been a lot of great work coming out about this recently, whether it's Crouch or other folks talking about kind of their daily liturgy in a sense, or their rule of life. I think personally for me, some of the steps I've taken, I used to check email first thing in the morning when I woke up for years. It was something that I only started doing because of the smartphone. But in the last year, I actually have made a decision not to do that as a kind of an acknowledgement that, of my powerless in general over this device, that the first thing I'm going to do is not really use it to check email. I'm going to listen to scripture, which is interestingly a redemptive kind of use of the smartphone, because I'm listening to it on there. But even I'm going to take it a step further after that. And what I do is I then leave my smartphone in a different room, and I walk out and I go be with my family, or I go outside in nature, as just a further step to kind of get away from the gravity of it, as a way of just starting the day and starting a liturgy of the day in a sense of acknowledging, life beyond the smartphone.
Right. And I mean, we're all living some liturgy, and I think we hear that word sometimes and think that it only has to do with spirituality in some way. But if you think about it, whatever our habits are throughout the day, I mean, if you put a calendar out from 5 a.m. till midnight and you just wrote down what your typical day looks like, you're kind of looking at a liturgy. And you're right. When you wake up and you're on your phone all day, or at night, it's the last thing that we're doing. That's kind of where our time and attention are going. And you're just saying, look, you need to be just as intentional about how you're going to get away from that phone and make sure you're reconnecting with things that help you be more human. And I think it's such a timely message for the moment we're in. And I know the work that you've done, and this is why I've appreciated your perspective, because you've done this detailed work. Like, you understand the tech side, you understand the behavioral analysis side. You've been understanding it, but trying to figure out how are we going to use that for good, right? How are we going to turn this in our favor? How are we going to make sure all the hours people are spending on their phones could be used in some redemptive way? And you created an entire company called rTribe that I'm excited for you to describe a little bit more about how you've tried to turn this and say, look, I want to kind of confront something I see wrong in culture by creating something, not just criticizing it, but literally creating something people can start to utilize and interact with to help them. Tell us a little bit about what you created and where that idea came from.
Yeah, and somebody could listen to this, like you're saying, and think, I'm a complete technology pessimist. But really, it comes out of a great appreciation in founding this company, rTribe. It started really as both a personal and professional idea, where my co-founder Josh and I, we were in a counseling center together. We were accountability partners, we were buddies, but we were also helping people around our age and younger. And we did see that there's a real missing piece that the smartphone could play in terms of empowering the kind of connection and relationship we had with one another and with our clients and between our clients when we're not with each other physically, which is, for every hour that you might be with somebody offline, you'll spend 42 times more online. And so, we really thought about, how do we redeem the smartphone for good? How do we, instead of being kind of manipulated by AI that wants to shop or click or do these sorts of things, how do we make our community our AI, in a sense, reaching out to us reaching out to them, and not in a social media sort of way either, where we're kind of prone to be, wanting to share our best moments, but instead creating a platform of small group orientedness, where you're actually, it really invites you to share your biggest struggles as well as your biggest moments of triumph with one another. So that's where it really kind of was born out of.
I love it. And I think the way it's working, as I've talked to people who've used it, it's just amazing, because they're comfortable there. They're comfortable kind of acknowledging some things in the digital environment that maybe are a little harder to acknowledge when you're face to face with somebody. So you're walking that really thin edge of leveraging some of that, I think, to help people be more honest, transparent, open. But as you've done this work, talk a little bit about what are the temptations you find because we have digital technology in our hand. What seems to be the thing that's grabbing leaders' attention, or is it more men or women that tend to have challenges with digital devices? What are some of the actual addictions that you guys are dealing with? Because you do come from this background where you not only understand tech but psychology, and you're looking at human behavior. What is it that you're seeing?
Yeah, it's somewhat stereotypical, but some of the lines are being blurred in terms of how people are getting sucked in different ways. But largely with men, we know that pornography use is become pretty much a regular thing for most men in the world who have a smartphone, and it doesn't matter what faith they have or their background. And again, that's also the smartphone, the anonymity, the accessibility, the affordability, all of those things create that gravity again in that direction. For women, we know that kind of the self-esteem and mental health issues around body image have skyrocketed because of social media use. And so I heard one lady talking at a conference, and she said, men are generally drawn to private parts and women are generally drawn to private lives. So we kind of see that playing out. But of course, like I said, we're seeing kind of a crossover in both of those ways. And so it's not exactly clear cut. But yeah, that's generally what we're observing.
Okay, so explain for people who visually don't have the app on their phone, rTribe and what you created. Explain really concretely, like, how does this work? How do people engage it? What types of situations should people, find themselves in that would really benefit from being a part of the rTribe movement?
Yeah, so the rTribe is all based on connection, right? Connection to self, connection to peers, connection to a guide, connection to content, connection to inspiration. And so what does that practically look like is every day that the app invites you to check in. And what that means is a check-in. It's not like a Yelp check-in or a Facebook check-in. It's really a moment of meditation where you're asked to, say, hey, did I have a victory today or a setback? And that could be based on something that you're tracking. It could be just how you feel. You're asked to reflect on your emotions. You're asked to reflect on your healthy habits. And all of that shows up in a feed for, again, these few people that you've invited to be part of your journey. And they are doing the same, doing their own tracking. You could be in messaging groups. You can also be do individual player mode too, if you want. And really a lot of folks who are individual players might just be using the app to engage with a coach. We've wanted to make getting a coach and getting access to professional help about as easy as getting an Uber or a Lyft, where, just with a few questions, you're matched to somebody who will be a good fit for you. And we try to make it extremely affordable as well. So it's part of, again, that redemptive edge that we're trying to bring into technology, where a lot of people can't afford professional help, and we want to do everything we can to make that possible.
Well, this is where, to me, this is incredible for the moment we're in with mental health conversations, just being constant with people looking for ways to help their anxiety, trying to find relief, trying to have somebody to talk to about the issues they're faced with. This is what I've loved. I mean, you guys have curated an incredible group of counselors that are available to get into those conversations right from someone's smartphone. So you talk about turning it for good, like somebody goes from maybe watching porn 1 minute to going, I've got an addiction, I need help. They can go into rTribe, find a counselor, actually start dealing with that immediately, and come into a relationship with them that they can have access to that counselor weekly, right? Monthly. I mean, you have like a bunch of different ways this can happen at different pricing levels, but you're trying to make counseling, as I see it, coaching, counseling, super accessible for the average person who otherwise doesn't know where to start, where to get a referral, how to look it up, how to figure it out, who to trust. And it seems like you guys have done a lot of the hard work to make that more accessible, and that's why it's taken off.
Yeah, definitely. And, about 70% of the people who are signing up for coaching and counseling, it's their first go at it. So
Wow.
yeah, you're right. People don't know, they're afraid to walk into a room, to show up at a place. But if you, again, put it right there where they can access it, they're much more likely to get the help they need.
Yeah. And I know there's another aspect to kind of what you created, that organizations are now starting to use the technology because rTribe's using it to build these communities and relationships. But you have another way that people can use it. Maybe leaders are listening here and they're like, man, that's interesting, ways to connect with people kind of face to face using this technology. Talk a little bit more about how that works.
rTribe is a platform of its own, but we've found a lot of interest in people licensing the platform. Better Man is a movement, a men's movement. They want to reach 1 million men in a few years, and they're basically taken kind of the platform and put their own skin on it, which is great. And they can put their own content and all of that. But we also partner with corrections, where people use the rTribe platform with their own counselors and their own, obviously, clients. And the clients in this case are inmates or parolees. And so they get to use the platform in their own way as well. And so, a lot of people just see it kind of in the App Store, and that'll be most of what people understand about rTribe. But, if you are a leader with counselors or needing an app like rTribe, then we're definitely open to exploring those types of partnerships.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. I love the way that's going forward and the way it's happening. And I think to the point of listeners here, you might think about this as something that someone out there might need, but I just want to say to each of you, if you're facing something right now, if you're in a struggle, if you have a private sin happening in your life, an addiction that you just don't know how to engage this platform is incredible for that. I mean, talk a little bit about, Alex, your heart for just leaders who might be listening like us, who you can feel kind of stuck when you're leading an organization or a church. We've seen a lot of conversation in the last several weeks about pastors who are dealing with mental health issues and don't know where to go for it because they'll be looked at wrongly. And I just feel like part of what you've created here is a way to give them an out and a way to go talk to somebody without them having to deal with like all these other extra questions that start to arise when you start to acknowledge that there's weakness.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that's how I felt. I'm sure, that feeling when you're kind of a leader, especially in a Christian environment, that it's hard to find a place to be fully authentic because your job is on the line. And we've seen people who come out and share the struggle and they are kicked out and it creates even more chaos in their life. And so, this really is, kind of, I wish I had this when I was in ministry and I was struggling with pornography. I did share with people, but at that time too, like people didn't understand the difference between a spiritual formation issue versus like a disease, like an addiction, and that, you need to approach them differently. And so that's another way that I think leaders can stay stuck is, that maybe they're pursuing all the spiritual remedies, but they really need to find a professional help in a confidential way where they can feel absolutely safe sharing anything and everything that they need to share.
Yeah, that's so great. Well, Alex, thank you for creating culture. We talk about these ideas a lot at Q. I remember 2 years ago, you presenting this big idea in 5 minutes when you were right at the beginning of this idea, and to see it go forward, to see what you've created, to see how many thousands of people are now engaging it, using it, how much good it's doing in the world. Just congratulations on that. I know there's some days it's hard. You're still working on business models. You're figuring it out. But man, you've done the hard work of like bringing something new into the world that changes the conversation. And so thank you for inspiring so many others who are listening as they keep pursuing their dream to make a difference in the world.
Yeah. Thank you, Gabe, for having me.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that conversation with Alex, and just what they've created is phenomenal. In fact, we worked out with them the ability for you to actually utilize this platform. If you're listening to this and you're going, I could use some help like that. I could use picking up my phone and having a 30-minute conversation for free with a licensed professional who can help you achieve freedom and growth. All you need to do is text the word tribe, TRIBE, and the word on. So tribe on to 555-888. And when you text that, they're going to get a system going with you, get you in front of a licensed professional where you can spend 30 minutes for free. I would encourage all of you, take advantage of this. If you could use some coaching, if you could use some input, advice, counsel on things that you're going through in a very private space, take advantage of this. Hope you have a wonderful week. Looking forward to the continued learning with you in our next episode on the Q Podcast.